Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, we will be starting in 1 minute. May I request you to kindly take your seats. Please keep the exits and aisles clear and your phone on silent.
Free the space in front of the rooms, and the meeting is starting.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, we will be starting very soon. Can I request you to kindly take your seats? Please keep the aisles and exits clear. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, we will be starting now. Can I please request you to take your seats, keeping the exits and aisles clear? Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, can I request you to please take your seats? Please keep the exits clear. We will be starting now. Kindly take your seats, keeping the exits and aisles clear.
We're moving now. Let me just tell them, please have a seat.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to request you to kindly take your seats and keep the exits and aisles clear. We will begin now. Please ensure your phones are switched off or on silent. Our distinguished dignitaries will be joining us shortly.
They are on the way.
Our distinguished dignitaries are on their way. Can I request everyone to please take your seats, keeping the exits and aisles clear.
They're coming. Just a second.
Our distinguished dignitaries will be joining very soon. Can I request everyone to kindly keep the exits and aisles clear and take your seats. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats, keeping the exits and aisles clear. Our distinguished dignitaries will be joining shortly. I would like to welcome the distinguished dignitaries and invite them to take a seat at the head table of the hall.
Good morning, everybody. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, my pleasure to welcome you to the 6th Asia-Pacific Forum on Sustainable Development. And it's indeed a real pleasure for me to return to Bangkok. I was here last year when I took over as the chair of the 5th session. And I'm very glad to officially open the forum. Before we start the forum, I just wanted to say a few words. First, I would like to recognize the contribution of my co-chair, His Excellency Levin Devashtvili, Minister of Environment Protection and Agriculture of Georgia. He and I worked together, and he represented the region very successfully at the high-level political forum in New York last year. And he also helped me in supporting the implementation of 2030 agenda in the Asia and the Pacific. At the 5th forum, we agreed on regional perspectives in respect to resilience and sustainable development. And the forum laid stress on inclusive multi-sector, multi-stakeholder participation, particularly by the disadvantaged and risk-prone populations in the whole of government engagement on SDGs. The forum systematically examined various aspects of sustainability and resilience and possible interventions to operationalize appropriate strategies for the Asia-Pacific region. The forum noted the progress made in the mainstreaming of climate change policies, including in those emphasis accent to efficient, modern, and renewable energy. It showcased government efforts to align policies with the 2030 agenda and highlighted the unfolding cooperation among them, including regional as well as international organizations. Assessment of the progress on SDGs 6, 7, 11, 12, and 15 was very instructive. On SDG 6, considering the region's lowest per capita water availability in the world, it focused on improving the management of recycled water as well as other sources like rainwater. Promotion of affordable access to renewable energy sources was a pivotal concern in the context of SDG 7. Over the year, the forum contributed to the regional dimension discussed at the high-level political forum by sharing Asia-Pacific perspectives during the ministerial segment and a series of side events organized by ESCAP in cooperation with its partners. Moreover, 5 sub-regional consultations organized by ESCAP sub-regional offices in preparation of the 6th forum gave the opportunity to member countries to share achievements, challenges faced and opportunities arising from the 2030 agenda. The forum elicited and emphasized important lessons from the voluntary national reviews relating to government ownership, multi-stakeholder participation, integration of SDGs in national planning, and availability of quality data. Ladies and gentlemen, at this point I just wanted to highlight to you an initiative that has been taken in India, which is to prepare what we call an SDG index, whereby we have brought together 48 indicators in which we compare across our states. And I commend you to have a look at that, because that's something that we could use for inter-country comparisons, as well as achievement as well as making SDGs a mainstream of development policies. In the next 3 days that we are here, we would like to see how we have progressed over the year, how we have addressed the issues and challenges that we have recognized, how the VNRs are progressing and matured, and how we can collectively contribute to global enterprise of achieving 2030's targets, hopefully before the target date. With those very few words, I welcome you all again very much to this forum, and I hope that we have very successful conversations in the next 3 days coming up. Thank you very much. Thank you. I understand that the Secretariat has prepared a little surprise for us. I'm happy to introduce the International Network of Artists, Joe Bell. That was terrific. That is simply terrific. And I hope we can all collectively answer the question, what can we do more for empowerment and equality, etc. Thank you very much to that group. Ladies and gentlemen, once more, a big round of applause for them. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's now my pleasure to invite Her Excellency Ms. Kira Cristian de Azucena, Vice President of ECOSOC, to address the forum. Your Excellency.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I am honored to address you this morning in my capacity as Vice President of ECOSOC, representing the Asia-Pacific region. On behalf of Ambassador Inga Ronda King, President of ECOSOC, I thank the ESCAP Secretariat for the organization of the 6th Asia-Pacific Forum on Sustainable Development. This forum provides an important and dedicated space for assessing progress and allowing peer learning in the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals in our region. It also provides a platform to support the preparation process of the Voluntary National Reviews, or VNRs, of member states. The APFSD will provide important inputs to the High-Level Political Forum, or HLPF, the central platform of the UN for follow-up and review of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the Sustainable Development Goals. HLPF will be held twice this year in New York, the first under the auspices of ECOSOC in July, and the second under the auspices of the General Assembly in September. As we are all aware, the September HLPF, which we also refer to as the SDG Summit, will provide member states the first opportunity to review all the SDGs. It is the priority of the ECOSOC presidency to have in July the best HLPF thus far by ensuring, among others, substantial space and truly interactive discussions on VNRs and on SDGs under review, namely SDG 4, quality education, SDG 8, decent work and economic integration, SDG 10, reduced inequalities, SDG 13, climate action, SDG 16, peace, justice, and strong institutions, and SDG 17, partnerships for the goals. Within this context, the APFSD provides us the opportunity to take stock of lessons learned and the challenges ahead. I look forward to a frank exchange of ideas and proposals for new avenues of development and partnerships to strengthen the follow-up and review mechanism, not only at the regional, but also at the global level. The APFSD shares the theme with HLPF, which is empowering people and ensuring inclusiveness and equality. This is an important theme, which should focus our discussions on the people, in full alignment with the essence of the 2030 Agenda, that is, to be people-centered and to ensure that no one is left behind. Of particular importance are our discussions on empowerment and inclusion, elements that are truly crucial and transformative in our collective commitment towards the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. I am also pleased to see that we have a full morning tomorrow dedicated to peer learning on the VNRs. The President of the General Assembly and the ECOSOC President are working very closely together to ensure that the outcomes of both the July and the September HLPFs convey a strong political message that the international community remains committed to continue to deliver on the 2030 Agenda together. It is therefore important to present a strong case to your capitals, as well as to engage with colleagues in working towards a political declaration to be adopted in September by consensus at the SDG Summit. The summit also needs to celebrate and encourage the multiple efforts to advance implementation. The success of the SDG Summit is intrinsically linked to the success of the Secretary General's Climate Summit and the high-level dialogue on financing for development, which will also be held in September. The preparations of all three high-level events should be mutually reinforcing and mobilize the widest range of stakeholders possible. In addition, ECOSOC's calendar is full with back-to-back meetings of its commissions on statistics, women, population and development, and public administration. Next month in New York, we have the ECOSOC Youth Forum, the ECOSOC Partnership Forum, and the ECOSOC Forum on Financing for Development follow-up. In May and in June, ECOSOC will convene its humanitarian affairs, integration, and operational activities segments for development. I wish to note that the Philippines, in its capacity as APG representative to the Bureau, will be chairing the 2019 Operational Activities segment, which will discuss the status of implementation of current reforms in the UN development system. Ladies and gentlemen, the year 2019 is a critical year for development, with the 2 HLPFs, the end of the first SDG cycle, and the first year of the reforms in the United Nations development system. Your work is truly a valuable input to this process. In closing, allow me to quote the Philippine Secretary of Foreign Affairs. Finally, we renew our commitment to continue the work and to never put down the burden of human responsibility, to give a shoulder to lean on to those who might otherwise be left behind, and thereby leave us poorer by the lack of their companionship in a journey we would not have undertaken without them. We are going all the way together or not at all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Azucena. Ladies and gentlemen, it's now my honor to invite His Excellency Mr. Thani Thongphakdi, Deputy Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Kingdom of Thailand, to deliver his statement.
Mr. Chair, Excellencies, Madam Deputy Secretary General, Madam Executive Secretary, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. Permit me at the outset to convey my Foreign Minister's regret for not being able to join us this morning due to unforeseen circumstances. On his behalf and that of the Royal Thai Government, I would like to warmly welcome all participants to the 6th session of the Asia-Pacific Forum on Sustainable Development. Mr. Chair, as long as there are still children who cannot go to school, people who cannot afford to go and see a doctor, and people who cannot get decent work, then we have not yet realized sustainable development. It has now been 4 years since the adoption of the 2030 Agenda. Only 11 years remain until 2030, but given our current rate of progress, the risk of leaving people behind is substantial. We must therefore step up our efforts to reach those who are the furthest behind. And in doing so, we must always have a sense of urgency and remind ourselves never to be complacent. Our Asia-Pacific region has enjoyed remarkable economic growth over the past 2 decades. This has lifted millions out of poverty. Still, though, inequality persists and is actually on the rise. Look at education, for example. Despite making substantial progress in primary education, a gap remains throughout the Asia-Pacific region. An ESCAP study found that while gross enrollment rate for higher education in the Republic of Korea reached close to 97% in 2014, the rates in other countries may be as low as 3%. These inequalities repeat themselves within countries, depending on many factors, among which are financial constraints, access to transportation, limited educational institutions, disabilities, ethnicity, and immigration status. Education is a key building block in everybody's life. If we have early access to quality education, then the chances increase that we will have gainful employment and will also learn how to make good decisions and affect our lives, such as those concerning health and nutrition, or even who to elect to represent us in politics. Mr. Chair, over the past 4 decades, Thailand has made a lot of progress in social and economic development. moving from a low-income country to an upper-middle-income country in less than a generation. Poverty has declined substantially over the last 30 years, from 67% in 1986 to 7.1% in 2015. However, the Gini index of Thailand fell only gradually from 43.8 in 1988 to 36 in 2015. This implies that inequality issues continue to pose significant challenges for us. Let me share with you Thailand's efforts in addressing inequality. First, the government has sought to empower people at the grassroots level. We have substantially strengthened what we call the Village Fund scheme. More than 70 billion baht has been allocated to over 79,000 village funds. This has increased over 200,000 activities and projects covering over 13 million members of the village funds. These funds aim to reduce household debt and enhance productivity in various sectors, such as farming and community tourism, among other things. Through participating in the work of the village funds, people can also take part in the decision-making affecting their own lives and communities. And by doing so, they will develop a sense of belonging and ownership. Empowering communities is, in fact, vital to sustaining development and strengthening democracy, transparency, and good governance. Second, Thailand has continued to rely on the public-private people partnership model. The government has engaged the private sector to assist in social development. For example, in partnership with schools, community development, community tourism, product development for local communities, among many other things. Our Nan Sandbox in Nan Province is a good example of public-private people partnership that aims to revive forest areas from land that has been depleted by maize cultivation. It is being spearheaded by the private sector together with the community and with the support of the government. Third, we will strive to create a better ecosystem for sharing. Recently, the Social Enterprise Act was passed to encourage the work of social enterprises in Thailand. Under this new law, social enterprises will enjoy tax benefits. The rationale here is that the government alone cannot solve inequality. We therefore need to take a whole-of-society approach. We are now heartened to see that more and more social enterprises have been set up in Thailand to tackle social issues. These social enterprises are often run by able and passionate young executives. The power of these young minds and their dynamic activism cannot be underestimated. Thailand will be organizing a side event tomorrow featuring a number of Thai social enterprises. One of them, for example, being Siam Organic, a social enterprise set up to address the problems of farmer poverty through innovative organic products with global appeal. Their actions directly and indirectly help to promote SDGs 1, 2, 3, 10, and 12. So please join us at our side event tomorrow to see with your own eyes how social enterprises can be forces for social change and impact. This year, our leaders will be meeting in New York in September at the High-Level Political Forum on Sustainable Development. The Asia-Pacific region will have much to share with other regions of the world. We have success stories in the areas of economic growth. Our success stories on addressing inequality will even be more appealing. This year also, Thailand is chairing the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN. Our theme is Advancing Partnership for Sustainability. In this regard, we would like to call on the countries of the Asia-Pacific to also advance partnership for sustainable development, not only among countries in the region, but also beyond. On our part, Thailand has been a strong partner for the UNOSSC, which reopened its regional office here at ESCAP in 2017. Thailand also actively participated at the BAPA Plus 40 in Argentina last week to share our sustainable development experiences. We in the Asia-Pacific region will also have to support the reform of the UN development system, which will benefit all developing countries. We have to share our good practices, experiences, and homegrown approaches. to sustainable development. Thailand will set up the ASEAN Center for Sustainable Development Studies and Dialogue by November this year to promote the sharing of best practices on sustainable development. Also, a CMEO Center on the Sufficiency Economy philosophy will also be set up to share our sufficiency economy philosophy, on which Thailand has relied on as our guiding light towards the path of sustainable development. Mr. Chair, inequalities will not go away easily. Empowering our people and communities, enhancing public-private people partnership, and creating an ecosystem for sharing will help to narrow the gap. Stronger cooperation and partnership, exchanges of best practices, sustainable business models, and homegrown approaches will help lead to sustainable development, leaving no country and no one behind. Instead of only enhancing our national competitiveness, we should challenge ourselves to enhance our ability to share, our ability to give, our ability to make lives better for others. As governments, we have mandates and responsibilities. As human beings, making our lives meaningful to others is the only way that a limited time in this world will be worthwhile. I wish you all a productive and meaningful meeting and a pleasant stay in Thailand. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and thank you for emphasizing the public-private people's partnership for reducing inequalities. Thanks a lot. It's now my real pleasure to invite Ms. Armida Salcia Alishamana, Under Secretary General of the United Nations and Executive Secretary of ESCAP, to deliver her address. Madam.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Honorable Ministers, Excellencies, Excellency Mr. Rajiv Kumar, Vice Chairman of Niti Aayog, India, Excellency Ms. Kira Christian Azuzena, Vice President of ECOSOC, Mr. Tani Tongpakdi, Representative of the Royal Thai Government, Ms. Amina Mohammed, Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 6th Asia-Pacific Forum for Sustainable Development, the forum that provides all stakeholders the vibrant and collective opportunity to steer the future direction of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development that promises to leave no one behind in Asia and the Pacific. In Asia and the Pacific, the countries have undergone significant economic and social transformation over the past 7 decades. This process of extraordinary dynamism has led to changes in lives of our people and societies. First, the region has witnessed significant reduction in extreme poverty, thereby creating the conditions for incomes and opportunities to increase, for longer, healthier lives to be led. Second, the region continues to progress towards vital goals such as providing universal education. More people have access to affordable clean energy. Third, at the sub-regional level, there has been satisfactory progress across various sustainable development goals. This achievement has been powered by the entrepreneurship, hard work, and innovation, and I commend it to visionary leaders of our region. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, in view of this, let me highlight key observations on the status of the Sustainable Development Goals for the region. First, the Asia-Pacific region needs to accelerate progress on every single SDG by 2030. Now, our priority is to keep the momentum. Second, member states required to accurately monitor and review progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals. And third, our analysis is clear. There is no room for complacency in promoting collective efforts towards the advancement of the regional roadmap for the implementation of the 2030 Agenda. Today, let me take this opportunity by outlining for your consideration several policy options that can further be considered as a way forward in supporting our member states to find solutions on accelerating the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. Firstly, to achieve the 2030 Agenda, increased investment is needed to quicken the pace of progress. Initial analysis suggests that most countries can afford it, although where the money is needed will vary greatly in a region of the size and diversity of Asia and the Pacific. What is consistent, however, is evidence that empowering people and ensuring inclusiveness and equality, the theme of this year's forum, can help accelerate progress towards all SDGs. Secondly, we need to enable people to shape the policies which determine their future, the services on which they depend, and the household decisions which govern their daily lives. If the additional investment can be unlocked, empowering people can ensure policies are fit for purpose and every dollar spent on target. Thirdly, we should put rights at the heart of environmental policy, gives people a stake in the environment, and quickens the transition to renewable energy. Supporting women's participation in household decisions drastically improves children's health and education. Resetting social norms to make child marriage unacceptable demonstrably improves women and girls' educational attainment. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, with these objectives in mind, ESCAP has worked with the ADB, Asian Development Bank, and UNDP, United Nations Development Programme, to determine how empowerment can be delivered. Its recommendations focus on integrating fundamental rights into modern legal frameworks, eradicating prejudice from our societies and institutions, giving vulnerable groups more power over productive resources, and institutionalizing civil society's role in shaping policies and public services. Actions in these areas are known to make a tangible difference. Many innovative approaches are underway. Participatory budgeting and decentralized governance are increasingly common. Rights-based approaches are being taken to employment provision. These are initiatives on which we should build on. As we are moving towards our shared prosperity and future for all, ESCAP stands ready to work with you to support this transformational journey. Importantly, I must emphasize that we need strong and durable partnerships, strengthening cooperation between governments, civil society, businesses, and the UN system, but also within and between our sub-regions holds great promise. It can underpin regional solutions to sustainable development challenges, strengthen action at national level, and support global multilateral solutions. My hope is that this forum, or APFSD, can drive this agenda forward. 4 years into the 2030 Agenda, it will facilitate in-depth reviews of progress towards the SDGs, which will be considered by the high-level political forum. You will have the opportunity to reassess our regional follow-up and review mechanism and share your experiences on voluntary national reviews. This is our opportunity to prepare the review of the global architecture at the HLPF Summit later this year. I'm looking forward to your active participation. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, ESCAP is your platform, and we are always ready to share your voices in every corner of this fast and ever-changing development landscape of this region. The pace of change in Asia and the Pacific continues to capture the imagination of the world. Together, we can make it sustainable and inclusive. Let us empower people and through partnerships, give scale to our effort. The expertise gathered in this room can drive the initiatives needed to get us on track to achieve the 2030 Agenda. I'm looking forward to working with all of you to seize it and to accelerate sustainable development in Asia and the Pacific. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's my honor now to invite Ms. Amina Mohammed, Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, to deliver her keynote address. Ms. Mohammed.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency Dr. Rajiv Kumar, our Chairman of the Forum and Vice Chair of the NITI-AYOG in India, our Vice President of ECOSOC, Madam Zusena, our Deputy Permanent Secretary of the MFA of Thailand, Excellencies, dear colleagues, many friends that I can see here, but I want to give a special shout out to our representative of civil society, Madam Sabrina Razu. Welcome. It's a great pleasure to be here today, and I thank the Royal Thai government for its warm welcome and its hospitality. This year, I intend to participate in all the regional forums across our 5 regions, and this is my 3rd in the last week, having been in Europe and Africa and now in Asia Pacific. 2019 will be a defining year for the 2030 Agenda, and all the regional forums will pave a way to our first stock-taking of the SDGs in the General Assembly in September. The Asia Pacific is a region like no other. This is an incredibly diverse group of countries, from large economies to the small island states, from G20 economies to countries facing long-lasting crises and seeking a transition back into development. From middle to low-income countries, this region is a microcosm of our global community. Each face unique challenges, but all driven by the same ambition for a better future for all. Over recent years, I've watched with fascination the progress of nations of Asia and the Pacific in their road to sustainable development. Your governments have taken on the challenge of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development with decisive leadership. You're making significant investments to enhance data and statistical coverage, taking partnerships to scale, and promoting people-centered policies, strategies, and programs. This region has also established strong foundations for cooperation and peer exchange. And here I would like to acknowledge the leadership of our Executive Secretary, Armida, in ensuring that you are well supported. We have a regional roadmap for implementing the 2030 Agenda, which ensures clarity in the direction of travel. Your follow-up and review infrastructures designed to allow you to understand the human stories behind the numbers and to exchange best practices to move forward are exemplary. Many of your leaders in the South-South Cooperation, and as we are reminded in Buenos Aires last week, amongst our countries from the South, have continued to be an invaluable asset to advance sustainable development. And you are taking steps together to leave no one behind. Today's focus on inclusion and equality speaks to that commitment. This is a powerful message for the 2030 Agenda. No matter where you were born, how marginalized your community is, the world is determined to carry everyone along on the journey to 2030. Excellencies, friends, I encourage you to take advantage of the discussions today that will address a few fundamental questions. Who are the no ones that we pledge to not leave behind, and what determines their exclusion? What does it mean to feel included or excluded? And are we doing enough, collectively, individually, to empower all individuals of our human family? These are not theoretical questions voiced through microphones in our meeting rooms in New York, Bangkok, or other capitals of the world. These are real-life dilemmas for billions around the world who look at the 2030 Agenda as a life-changing possibility for a better future. We must recognize, however, that we are not on track to deliver on the ambitions that we set ourselves in 2015. The data starting to emerge indicates that the world isn't on track to achieve the SDGs. In Asia Pacific, rising inequalities have become a major obstacle to accelerating progress. Inequality of wealth, of access to basic services, and inequality in the ability to withstand setbacks and respond to the ravages wrought by climate change are all on the rise. The numbers are very clear and they're very stark. The region's combined income inequality has increased by over 5% in the last 2 decades, including the region's most populous countries, China, India, and Indonesia. As a result, 70% of the population in this region lives in countries where inequality has grown over the recent years. Gender inequality continues to hinder progress. Close to 2/3 of all working women are in the informal sector, with insecure in employment and little, if any, social protection. And while the region has now become home to the largest number of billionaires in the world, still millions of people lack access to fundamental services. This is eroding social and economic progress, but it also undermines the social contract with consequences for peace and stability. Environmental degradation is also taking its toll. The average loss in productivity due to pollution is roughly 8 times higher in developing countries than in developed countries in the region. I know I speak for all of us when I say that this is time to share the benefits of growth and globalization more widely. It is a matter of urgency to empower our women, our girls, to leverage the immense potential of our youth for positive change and innovation, and to reverse the trends on inequalities, and to put people and planet at the center of our work. There is no need to look very far. There are abundant examples in this region that point the way forward for empowerment and inclusion for everyone. The question really is, how can we increase ambition and accelerate implementation with urgency on the 2030 Agenda? Allow me to proffer 3 drivers. First, we need to break down the silos that constrain policy action across sectoral lines. The paradigm shift ushered in by the 2030 Agenda is not complete. We have yet to fully transition from the MDGs to the era of the SDGs. For example, addressing climate change is not only about preventing catastrophic events. Reducing fossil fuels also has direct and immediate benefits on health. Second, we need to match intentions with finance, both public and private. There is growing private interest in SDG financing and a proliferation of impact investment in the region, and this is great. But we are still far from the trillions that are required to achieve the SDGs everywhere for everyone. Third, we need to take action to scale, to partnerships at scale that we have not witnessed before, to be very ambitious. We will not achieve the 2030 Agenda nor win the race against climate change without involving all sectors of society towards our common goals. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, you can count on the United Nations to continue to transform and to better support all your efforts as a collective. The Secretary General is leading a deep reform in the United Nations to place prevention at the center and ensure that the organization is better positioned to support the implementation of the 2030 Agenda. We now have a roadmap for change and a clear and ambitious mandates that have been given by the UN General Assembly. And we are moving forward at full speed. We know many of you are already engaged with our UN country teams to leverage these reforms and effect that change on the ground. At the end of this process, you can expect to see more cohesive, effective, and accountable UN country teams. We want to adapt more closely to the priorities and the needs, also the gaps in each developing country, with an empowered leadership for development and with much better coordination. Resident coordinators will be critical in leveraging more systematically all the expertise and the assets that are scattered across the UN, including in our regional economic commissions and our specialized agencies. We are currently working to review all of our regional assets to see how we can maximize our impact in support of country action. We need an architecture that responds to the heightened demands and ambitions of the 2030 Agenda. On the 1st of January this year, we crossed that major milestone in the reform process with the creation of an independent and empowered system to coordinate the development activities in the UN. Resident coordinators were also in the past resident representatives of the UN Development Programme. Now they dedicate full attention to coordination, policy and partnerships needed for the SDGs, while the UNDP can fully focus on its important development mandate and reassert its role as a thought leader that is also deeply valued. Later today, I will meet with resident coordinators from this region who are here to engage in these regional discussions and come back with new tools to support you. Our resident coordinators are our leaders for development on the ground, and they work to support your efforts and make the 2030 Agenda a reality for everyone. I know they're excited to proceed on this journey with you. We all know that the clock is ticking. on the 2030 agenda, and the true test of our reforms will be results in each and every one of our countries and of our communities and the lives of our people. It is our collective responsibility to show greater urgency, to show greater ambition. I know that we have both the energy and the leadership in this conference room to make this happen. It is in that partnership and shared endeavor I wish us all the very best for this forum, and to take away from the group that danced for us just earlier that empowerment, inclusion, inequality, what can we do now? Thank you.
Thank you very much for those very inspiring words, Ms. Mohammed. Our next speaker is invited to represent the voice of the civil society, the principal stakeholders for all our work. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, please join me in welcoming Ms. Sabrina Rose Rasu, CEO of Vanuatu Young Women for Change, to deliver her remarks. Ms. Rasu.
Thank you. My name is Sabrina Rose Rasu. I'm from the beautiful island country of Vanuatu. I grew up in a single-parent home with my mother acted as both my mother and my father. While where I live, many live without electricity, running water, and proper sanitation facilities. My journey into understanding these challenges came at an early age. I will never forget the day when I was 14 years old, student, volunteered. I administered my first injection to a hypertension patient at Erakor Bridge community, under the supervision of a nurse, but in a community mobile clinic whose staff were overworked and often in need of help. My island home experiences regular catastrophic weather events which are becoming worse. When Cyclone Pam hit our island in 2015, much of the relief goods that were brought into the island never reached the women as the men in the community took control. When patriarchy meets climate change, it is always women and girls who feel it the most. And we have not recovered until now. These stories, however, are not just mine. They are also of women of many communities across this region. I know this because for the last 3 days, as people across the region gathered as the Asia-Pacific Regional Civil Society Mechanism, and we learned how we are a region rich of people, language, culture, resources, and local knowledge. These are disappearing, as many people in our region continue to be left behind. In a world where 26 richest person own such wealth as 50% of the world's poorest. A world where we only have 12 years to prevent climate catastrophe. Does this sound like equal and inclusive world? But there is hope. The people of Asia Pacific are fighting back. People's movements are growing and expanding and reclaiming our space, voices despite repression and silencing from the governments and corporate interest. While we are here, show your political will to transform an unequal and divided world. We do not want to see the same repeat of the same failed economic models that have created this mess. We demand system change. If you want to empower people, then you need to redistribute wealth, power, and resources. If you are creating a world for us that is both equal and inclusive, then you cannot have it without us and without a living planet. And you cannot have it without development justice. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, as I lay down my office of the chair for the 5th AFPCD, I just wanted to make one remark, which is to emphasize India's commitment to the SDG, to the 2030 agenda, and to assure all my colleagues here that you will find us right at the sort of head of this movement for empowerment, for equality, and for inclusion, which is so wonderfully highlighted by the previous speaker. Excellencies, I now move to the agenda item number 2, the election of officers to the Bureau. The Bureau will comprise the chair and vice chairs. I now open the floor for any nominations of the positions of the chair and vice chairs. I recognize the distinguished delegate from the Russian Federation.
Mr. Chair, my delegation has the honor in proposing the following delegates to serve on the Bureau for the 6th Asia-Pacific Forum on Sustainable Development. As Chair, His Excellency, Mr. Fidelis Magalhaes, Minister for Legal Reforms and Parliamentary Affairs of Timor-Leste. Following the tradition of the Asia-Pacific Forum on Sustainable Development, all ministerial level participants in attendance are proposed to be elected as vice chairs. My delegation is confident that the distinguished delegates who have been nominated would discharge their duties efficiently and effectively for the successful deliberations of the forum. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. The distinguished delegate of the Russian Federation has nominated His Excellencies Fidelis Magalhaes, Minister for Legal Reforms and Parliamentary Affairs, Timor-Leste, as Chair of the 6th APFSD, and all ministers, participants in attendance as Vice Chairs. Would any delegation wish to second the nomination? I recognize the delegation from Bangladesh.
Thank you, Chair. My delegation has the honor in seconding the nominations which have just been proposed by the distinguished delegate of the Russian Federation for the various bureau positions for the 6th Asia-Pacific Forum on Sustainable Development. My delegation has full confidence in the proposed bureau in discharging their duties for a successful deliberation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Are there any other nominations for the Bureau of the Asia-Pacific Forum on Sustainable Development at its 6th session? I don't hear any other nomination. I thus have the pleasure to formally announce that the Bureau of 6th session of the Asia-Pacific Forum on Sustainable Development is composed of the following. As Chair, His Excellency Fidelis Magalhaes, Minister for Legal Reforms and Parliamentary Affairs, Timor-Leste, and all ministerial level attendees as Vice Chairs. Please join me in congratulating the officers of the Bureau for their election. It's now my honor to invite His Excellency Fidelis Magalhaes, Minister for Legal Reforms of Timor-Leste, to conduct this meeting in representation of the Bureau of the meeting from this point forward.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed an honor and privilege for me to serve as chair of this important forum. For myself and on behalf of other members of the Bureau, I wish to express our appreciation to the distinguished representatives for the confidence you have placed in us. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank the great work which has been done by the previous chair and vice chairs of the 5th APFSD. The 6th Asia-Pacific Forum on Sustainable Development will be critical in charting the path forward for our region. in particular through its reflections on the issues of empowerment, inclusiveness, and equality. We have an intensive agenda ahead of us. As chair of this 6th Asia-Pacific Forum on Sustainable Development, I shall do my best to ensure that the meeting achieves its objectives and produces meaningful outcomes, but will also rely on the able support of the members of the Bureau and the spirit of cooperation and involvement of all distinguished delegates. I also wish to thank the Secretariat for its organization of this forum, and I'm sure we can count on its continued good work. I would like to express particular appreciation to Ms. Alice Jasbana, Ms. Amina J. Muhammad, Her Excellency Azucena, and His Excellency Tani Tompagdi, representative of the Royal Thai government, and our speaker representing the voice of stakeholder groups for their thoughtful messages during the opening sessions. Now I would like to proceed with agenda item, adoption of agenda of the 6th APFSD. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, let us now take up agenda item 1C, adoption of the agenda as presented to you in document ESCAP/RFSD/2019/L.1. Are there any comments on this document? If there are no comments, the agenda as contained in document ESCAP/RFSD/2019/L.1 is adopted. Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for your cooperation in adopting the agenda of the 6th APFSD. And before we take a break, I understand that the MC has some announcements to make. I now invite the MC to take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before we proceed for the break, please allow me to make some important housekeeping announcements. It is my pleasure to invite all heads of delegations and speakers of the opening session to join the group photo during the upcoming break. The photo will be taken in front of Conference Room 1. Please ask ESCAP staff and liaison officers for VIPs for assistance if required. After the photo, we'll be launching the SDG Gateway in front of ESCAP Hall. We also invite everyone to visit the Pavilion of Partnerships, which provides an opportunity for participants to network and exchange experiences. On the second floor, you can explore the SDG Help Desk, and on the first floor, you can take pictures in our interactive SDG photo booth and meet our group of artists and their living SDG installations. Let me remind all delegations to submit their statements to the conference room officers. A form to request to speak should be completed to ensure that you're recognized by the chair. Kindly submit your requests early to ensure availability of our interpretation services. Furthermore, we encourage you to join the conversation on social media using hashtags APFSD and Global Goals. For funded participants, please note that lunch coupons will be distributed at the DSA payment counter in front of Conference Room 2 during the break. We shall resume at 10:15 sharp to consider Agenda Item 2. Kindly return to the conference room on time to avoid delays. Thank you for your kind attention.
I now announce the end of opening session.